Hey guys, what's up? It's Dave Trosko. Welcome to my kitchen. During the first of the year, our church tends to do a 21-day fast, and our family always does what's called the Daniel fast. So we thought it would be cool to show you a couple of recipes that we do at the Trosko household that are super easy, super quick, and can help you eat really well on the Daniel fast. Today we're focusing on some Italian cuisine. Our goal is a pizza, and along the way we're going to make a lasagna and show you how to make some awesome flatbread as well, Daniel fast style. So I hope you're ready for a fun, fast, educational experience. Let's get started. First, we're going to start with making a basic tomato sauce. This tomato sauce is super easy to make. We're going to crank our heat up on high. I've got my cast iron pot right here. And in the pot, we're going to take some olive oil. Now, Daniel Fast doesn't let you use many fats, but olive oil is one of them. So the basic spaghetti sauce is really easy. I call it a spaghetti sauce, but it's really just a tomato sauce, and it's quite versatile. You can use it for a lot of other things because the flavors in it aren't too Italian, if you would. I could also use this for Indian food, and I could also use it for chili as well. So first goes in the pot some olive oil. Got about a quarter cup of olive oil, and then I've got about 5 or 6 cloves of garlic. You definitely want to use a lot of garlic because garlic gives us a lot of flavor. In addition to the garlic, I've also got about 2 small chopped shallots. Everything is chopped pretty small, but I will say this, we are going to blend this up in the blender afterwards to kind of give it a smoother texture. So don't worry about getting things too small. You can kind of give everything just a rough chop. So after this is going, we're going to let this cook for just a second, just to kind of soften up the garlic and the shallots. Into the pot goes some black pepper. We're also going to throw some salt in there. And we kind of like it spicy, so we're going to add some crushed red pepper flakes to it too. Not too much, just a little to add some flavor. So that's going just about right. The heat's up high because we want to kind of do this quickly. And then into the pot goes about 6 cups of chopped Roma tomatoes. One important thing about tomatoes is never, ever, ever put them in the refrigerator because that totally ruins your tomatoes. Let them sit out on your counter. They'll actually get riper and redder as that happens, and they'll get a better flavor too. And that is pretty much it. We're gonna let that sit for a second, simmer up, come up to temperature. And we're also gonna add these are sun-dried tomatoes. Now, I make my own at home, because I have a dehydrator, but you can also do that if you don't have a dehydrator by just slicing some tomatoes about a 1/4 inch thick and throwing them in your oven on a baking sheet or a baking rack at about 175 to 200 degrees for quite a while. And you'll get some really nice sun-dried tomatoes. The thing about these that's great is they're concentrated flavor. So we're just gonna throw those in because we're gonna blend them up later. Now, because we added those dry tomatoes, we're also going to add just a touch of water to the mix. We're going to let that go for a second. The heat's kind of up. We're going to turn it down about halfway, and we're going to put the lid on the pot. And that's that for now. We're going to let that go, continuing to watch it and continuing to stir it for the next 45 minutes to an hour, and that'll give you a really nice sauce base. Then we'll blend it up, and it'll be even better. Here's our tomato sauce. About 15 minutes in, you can see the sun-dried tomatoes have softened up and rehydrated a little bit. We're gonna put the hood back on and let it continue to go. You don't wanna let it go too long without stirring it, otherwise the bottom will get scorched and you'll have burned tomatoes. Nobody likes burned tomatoes. We are about a half hour into our sauce and it's looking more sauce-like. Let's check on our sauce real quick. Yes, that looks like it's about to be blended. Everything is softened up. As you can see, the tomatoes have completely broken down. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna pull out my immersion blender. If you don't have one of these, you can just use a regular food blender or a food processor at home. Just let your sauce cool before you hit it up. I'm just gonna pulse that. We still wanna leave it kind of chunky because that's always good. But if you'd like it smoother, you can make it as smooth as you want to on this. Add a quick stir to pull it away from the sides and check the consistency of it, and that is pretty solid right there. We will let that go for just a little bit longer. I'm going to turn it down to low to let it simmer. You'll want to let it simmer so that those fresh tomatoes can kind of cook and release those natural sugars even more. Next up, we're going to do some pizza crust or flatbread or matzo bread, whatever you want to call it. I call it pizza crust because that's what we're making today. So for the Daniel fast, we normally can't eat any leavened bread or anything, but we can have whole grains. So what we're using today for our crust is whole wheat. We've also got some flaxseed. That's gonna help our flour have some texture to it. Oat bran, and then we've also got some seasonings, some garlic powder, and some rosemary, because that adds a lot of flavor to the bread. Also gonna grab my salt from over here. I've got the KitchenAid mixer. I'm sure everybody's got one of these. If you don't, you can always just use a big bowl, but this is super easy. In goes the flour. It's about a 1/4 cup of flaxseed meal. It's about a 1/4 cup of oat bran. And sometimes I'll also use a soy protein based powder as well to go in with the bread. That actually gives the bread a little more protein. So you can normally buy this stuff in bulk at Sprouts or Winco or any other place, but it adds a lot of nutrients to your bread, especially if you're looking to cut out meats. You need that extra protein. So in goes that. We're gonna go with some pretty hot water into the mix. 1 cup per 2 cups of whole wheat flour. We are probably gonna add a little bit more water to this, I will let you know, but I always kind of like to eyeball it before we go because you don't want it to be too dry and you don't want it to be too wet. So far, to remind you, we've got 2 cups of whole wheat flour, 1/4 cup of flaxseed meal, 1/4 cup of oat bran, and about a 1/4 cup of the soy protein powder. In with that, we're also going to put about 1 big tablespoon of garlic powder in there, 1 tablespoon of rosemary, dried rosemary. You can use fresh too if you've got it. And 2 big pinches of salt, probably about a tablespoon of salt. This bread lacks in flavor if you don't add enough salt to it. We're trying not to be too bad on the sodium, but we do want everything to still have some flavor. Also add a little cracked pepper to it. Add about another 1/2 cup of water to this mix, and I think that will bind everything. I'm gonna let that go for a second and let the dough work itself out. Working the dough is going to increase the gluten chains in the bread, and it's going to make the dough a little bit more stretchy for us to work with later. All right, everything looks to be mixed up pretty well. We're going to remove the dough from our... All right, we're going to kind of form it into a little bowl. It should be kind of sticky to the touch, but not too sticky. After we form it into a ball, we're going to let it sit in the pot for just a second, because what that's going to do is that's going to help the flour rehydrate. And then we'll get to working with it. We will leave it uncovered, unlike other bread, which normally you like to leave covered. This is a little bit wetter of a bread, so it can stand to be out in the open without drying out too much. So our dough here has now rested for about 15 minutes, and you can feel the top is a little drier, bottom's still gonna be kind of wet, and it's a little more workable. It's not as brittle as it was before. So what we're going to do with this bad boy is we're going to break him into 2 pieces, and then we're going to break each one of those into 2 pieces, and we're going to make little balls. So after these get all rolled out, just let them hang out for just a second more to kind of relax and ease into themselves. Cool. So once you've got your 4 little divisions of matzah dough, we're going to just roll these out. There's several ways you can do that. You can roll it out like a circle in a pizza crust. What I like to do is I like to make these little flatbread shapes. It's kind of easier to roll. It's going to be a long one there. I'm going for about a 1/4 inch thickness on it. Too thick and it won't bubble up very nicely. Too thin and it will get like cracker crispy You want it to have just a little bit of bite. But we're gonna take one piece of matzah, throw that right on in there, right onto the stone. I think we should be able to fit another one in there too. Let's grab this bad boy. Right on the pizza stone, and that will cook for about 8 minutes. You want to keep your eye on it. You don't want it to get burned, because then it'll just turn way too rock hard, because there's no yeast in it to help it fluff up and taste all doughy like bread. So you got to kind of watch the moisture content level of that bread while it cooks. All right, right now we're gonna do some really easy roasted Italian vegetables. We're gonna use these for a pizza topping, but we're also gonna be able to use them as a filler in the lasagna that we're gonna do later. You can also use them to mix up with any pasta sauce like we're making and throw that onto some zucchini noodles and make an awesome pasta primavera. Real easy. We're gonna quarter this zucchini. Cutting that pretty big. Nice big chunks of bell pepper. Little rough cut on these mushrooms here. Watch your fingers, George. I'm just gonna use some eggplant. This is just half of an eggplant. They normally are pretty big, so nice big chunks of eggplant. Some onions. I'm gonna do a rough chop on those too. Some regular cheap yellow onions. That all goes in. There's our pot of vegetables. Now on top of that, really simple. Start with some extra virgin olive oil. Get a nice amount of that. Pepper and salt. Pepper and salt go on everything. Seasoning is very important. We're gonna use the same seasoning that's in our crust, which is our rosemary. We're gonna use about a teaspoon of rosemary. We're gonna use our garlic powder. You can use fresh garlic for this too. I'm just using this because it's easier. So about 3 teaspoons or 1 tablespoon of garlic. That's all going in there, and then we're gonna give it a nice little stir with our hands. You can use a spoon if you like to, but this helps just get everything nice and coated. Once everything is good and coated, we're gonna go on a sprayed baking tray and into the oven at 475 for about 10 minutes, not too long. You don't want your vegetables to get too mushy. You just want them to have a nice little roast on it. Kind of let the onions be your guide on that. Once the onions kind of get a little golden, they're ready to go. Check on our veggies that have been in here for about 10 minutes. They are just slightly roasted. You can see the peppers have just started changing color. The eggplant is nice and soft. The onions are almost translucent. We're gonna let that sit there and cool off for just a second. We've got our sauce getting even closer to making the pizza. It's awesome. And we've already got all this good stuff to eat anyways. We could stop right now if we wanted to. All right, so one of the hardest things on the Daniel fast is the fact that you're not able to eat any dairy, which includes numerous things and my favorite food, cheese. Now, cooking Italian is kind of hard to do without cheese, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take everybody's favorite food, tofu, and turn it into something that kind of resembles cheese. So what I've got here is extra firm tofu. You can find this pretty much anywhere nowadays. I'm gonna roll it up in a clean towel, and you can either press this if you have a tofu press, but I don't. I'm just gonna take this tofu and I'm gonna wrap it up in this towel, and I'm gonna kind of try to squeeze as much water out of it as possible. This tofu's full of water, so I'm just gonna come over here and squeeze it out. Now, pressing tofu will help it drain water as well. This is just a quick way to get rid of some of the water, but if you want to maintain the shape of your tofu, this is not the way to do it. This is going to break the tofu down. Our end result is going to be something that somewhat resembles ricotta cheese. So I got a pretty good amount of water out about this. We're going to open this back up, and you'll see it's turned to somewhat of a crumbly mess, kind of like ricotta cheese. And we're just going to crumble this tofu in here. It's okay if it's still a little moist. You just don't want it to be too mushy. And again, I used firm tofu. You don't want to use soft or silken or anything else but firm. Firm is the best replacement and the easiest to work with. So we've kind of got this messy curd kind of looking thing here. And what we're going to do is we're going to season this. We're going to season it with, of course, a little olive oil, some salt, pepper. And what this is doing is it's just adding some more flavor to the tofu, which is pretty bland and flavorless before you get going. Not a lot of people like tofu, but that's pretty much because a lot of people don't know how to cook it right or to give it a good amount of flavor. This is going to give it great flavor. Just added some dried basil to it, a little of this garlic. So this is just going to create a nice seasoned kind of tofu mix. And now that we've got all of our ingredients ready, we're going to build a flatbread. So we've got our flatbread that we've pulled out of the oven. This is our matzo bread. It's nice and flat. It's got a couple bubbles to it. I'm going to press those down. This is going to be super easy, really quick. Throw that on your board there. We'll take our homemade sauce. Spread that out just so. You can see that still nice big chunks of garlic in there. There's some good chunks of tomato in there too. And then we're going to add our roasted veggies. And then on top, we're going to go with our faux cheese, our tofu cheese. Right inside here. Shuffle it onto that stone, and away we go. Now, while that pizza is cooking, I'm going to show you something even cooler that we can do with all these ingredients. This is one of my favorite things to do. And since we've got some time, we'll take this sauce. I've got a small Pyrex dish here. And I've got these awesome organic green lentil lasagna pasta noodles. So in the dish goes our sauce. This is all, we're doing all of this while we're cooking this pizza. So we've got the first layer of noodles down. I'm just using 2. Don't worry about it reaching the edges completely because it will expand. Throw some of our fake ricotta cheese mixture in here. That's our tofu. And then on top, these are uncooked noodles. All of this will cook up and it'll be delicious. And then we're gonna go over here to our veggies. A nice handful of veggies. This will be our veggie layer. On top there again. Make another layer of our fake cheesy ricotta. We're gonna end up using all of this. On top with another layer. Pasta. Looks like we've got room for another layer of veggies. Let's keep on layering it up, layering it up. 2 last pieces of lasagna go on top. We've got a 4-layer lasagna, and then we're gonna just go on top with more sauce. Super easy, Daniel Fast friendly veggie lasagna. Like nobody's business. And all we get to do now, we're just gonna throw that in the fridge or the freezer, depending on how long you wanna keep it for. And you've got dinner for another night. All right, our lasagna's in the fridge and our pizza is ready to come out. Look at that bad boy. And a good slice. That matzo bread has got a nice crunch to it. A nice piece of your Daniel Fast pizza. Pretty darn good if you ask me. Definitely satisfies those pizza fanatics out there, like myself. Thanks for joining us this week on Daniel Fast with Dave. I hope you and your family are able to use some of these recipes to improve your fasting throughout the week. Next week, we're going to be doing some Mexican food and the Daniel Fast, so definitely tune in for that. Be blessed, enjoy your fast. I pray that God speaks to you. We'll see you next time. Oh, hot. It's hot when it comes out of the oven and you take a bite out of it. Really hot. It's really hot.